Getting a start on the day. Talking about boundaries and rejection today. Hello. It looks like the notifications are going out on time, which is unusual. So, hi, come on in. Say hello. Let's give them a few more minutes. And then we will talk about boundaries and rejection. Hello, Cobalt. Lovely to see you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and how was my presentation? I think it went well. I think it went well. Talking about non-monogamy, stepping into non-monogamy last night, and yeah. So let's go ahead and get this started. Hello to everyone joining me right this moment. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Heather. Most people call me Nookie. I write books, teach classes, run workshops about love, sex, romance, and, of course, kink for people of all genders, relationship statuses, orientations, and more. I have traveled all over the world. I have explored different relationship styles and partners and kinks and so on and so forth. And all of my experiences thus far have led me to the belief that boundaries are the key to not only saving ourselves, but our relationships. Boundaries are what take us from getting by or merely average to healthy, loving, strong, and fan-fucking-tastic. So let's get started, shall we? I'll kick us off real quick with an introduction to my book and how I'm writing it. Hello, Womanopolis. It is a pleasure to see you. Hello, Barbs. Good to see you. So I am writing my new book. Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck is the working title right now. And you can get access to the chapters as I write and post them. There's like 40 or more up right now by registering for the Take No Shit workshop, which began on Monday. And the official start day for lessons is actually today. This link right here will take you there if you are not yet familiar with it. It is $27, which is less than $4 per week for 7 weeks. But it's also a name your own price. So you can get it for as low as $7 or $1 per week for those 7 weeks right now, because this is a beta trial of this workshop. So I'm running it with a group of people, guinea pigs, and testing out this intensive program on setting boundaries and making them stick. So I like to say that the book is sort of like a deep dive into everything you could ever want to know, and probably a lot of things you don't want to know about boundaries that are useful and important. And as you build more and more boundaries, and as you get more and more comfortable with boundaries, the nuances will really begin to matter to you. Whereas the workshop is sort of a buckle up, bitches, we're setting boundaries. Get those first high priority boundaries set and then go from there. So we are going to be talking today about the idea of boundaries are not a rejection. So how many people in the chat, how many of you feel like sometimes when somebody says no to an offer, or somebody tells you, hey, I really don't like it when you do that, there's a feeling of being rejected on a personal level, right? Um, and it's hard to get past that sometimes, even though I think we all know that, when we're talking to somebody and we say, hey, please don't do that. I really don't like it. We're actually not rejecting them at all, right? We're redirecting their behavior. We're hoping that what they're going to do is say, oh shit, I'm sorry, won't do that again, and then simply change. And we move happily forward into whatever future of friendship or play or whatever we anticipated, right? So, why do we feel this rejection when we're corrected on somebody's boundaries? That's part of what we're going to be talking about today. Womanopolis says, in Latin America, people are taught to say yes. I think that's interesting. And then I'm curious what you mean by that, because I believe that in most societies, especially most Western societies, people are taught to say yes overall. Like, go along, be agreeable, make people like you, whatever. So Barb says, absolutely. Even if I'm aware I'm pushing and they stand their ground. So yeah, that's a key, right? Because let's think about that. This is something we were talking about a little bit last night in the non-monogamy, taking your first steps into non-monogamy class that I was doing, is the idea that what we've got boundaries on one side of the coin and ethics on the other side of the coin, right? So boundaries are how we allow others to treat us, and ethics are how we treat others. So based on what you just said, Barb, by saying, even if I'm aware I'm pushing, right? When we as humans are consciously or subconsciously, unconsciously aware that we are pushing to try to get our way out of somebody, pushing past somebody's stated boundaries or preferences, we are also telling ourselves that that's okay. So we're making it more possible and more probable that we will allow people to do that to us. So part of preparing to have better boundaries, in my thoughts and experience, is to go cold turkey or to quit as much as possible pushing on other people's boundaries. Because the more we push on other people's boundaries, the more we realize, hey, I do this because I've got good reasons, and therefore other people might be doing this because they have good reasons, and that's okay because I do it, they do it, blah, 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 right? Control or be controlled. It's a cycle that we've been socialized to that we need to unsocialize in ourselves, I feel. Womanopolis says, because Latin America was conquered and ruled by dictatorships for too long. So there's definitely something to be said for that. That is definitely what I would consider a greater political, socio-political issue. I think on an interpersonal level, humans are taught to say yes from a very young age. Our parents teach us to say yes over saying no, because saying yes is what is going to give us their love, or so it seems at the time, or that is what's going to make us more friends or get us a family or whatever it is. And that's something that I do like to talk about when it comes to, it's not your fault you haven't had great boundaries thus far in your life, because the way that we have been socialized is to not have great boundaries by people who mean well, who want the best for us. So, toxic politeness isn't talked about enough. Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially when it's thrust upon us. It's kind of being discussed a little bit more now in regards to things like inequality in like school systems, about how if a boy might be harming a girl and the girl fights back, the girl gets in trouble because boys should just be boys. Toxic politeness. No, no, no. You should be nice because they don't know any better, right? Or whatever. So there's a lot there that we have been socialized as humans, not just as one gender or another, or even as one age or another, or one race or another, or whatever. But as humans, we have somehow come to the idea that this social construct that we have requires us laying ourselves down as a doormat in order to gain love. Womanopolis says, but when you say no everywhere, people demand from you an explanation. So what? No. Why? Because I said so. Because I don't want to do that. Because I don't have the money to do that. Because I said no. That's why. No does not require an explanation. And if people demand an explanation from you, then they are most often looking for a way to leverage themselves in and push that boundary. Cobalt says, recently, I realized I've been bumping into others' boundaries by failing to state my preference, then ending up with people offended by it. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How can I express that I want certain kinds of people and those offended should move along? So that's a good question. I don't necessarily feel like you need to express that. I personally take the tact of I am exactly myself. And if people don't like that, they find it uncomfortable to be around me. And so they generally move on. Right? So if I am being myself and I'm asserting my boundaries and they get offended by that, or they don't vibe well with how I communicate or what I have to say, I'm just going to keep being me, and either they figure it out or they're not a good fit. And I wish them, honestly, wish them the best of luck in everything. Yeah. Barb says, so true. I've become much more aware that I have fairly good boundaries, but not deep enough understanding of other people's boundaries if they are different from mine. That is a wonderful perspective to understand, again, not just how we've been socialized, but the assumptions that we bring into our engagements with other humans, and sort of assuming that their boundaries are going to be the same as yours. Has anybody here ever had one of those conversations where, from either side, one of you says, oh, I really don't like it when XYZ. And the other one of you says, oh, but if you did XYZ to me, that would be fine. I don't see what the problem is. That's exactly the type of situation I'm talking about. It's entirely possible that they don't see what the problem is, right? Because If you did XYZ to me, I would love it. Sort of like the whole unsolicited dick pic thing, right? Like, I don't understand why you're so upset. If somebody sent me unsolicited bits, I would love it. Well, more often, if you sent me unsolicited bits, I would love it. Well, two things are going on there. One, they may truly not understand. Two, they are still arguing the boundary as if they have a right to determine what makes you feel comfortable or uncomfortable. Right? And so what we need to do is focus in on, in that particular case, consent. Right? So like on Dating Kinky, the site that I run for kinky people, I say that if somebody tries to send a message with an attachment, the first time that, like, say, Cosmopolite tried to send me a message with an attachment, there'd be a little message that pops up that says, hey, you're an adult, so we're not trying to tell you what to do, but have you got consent to send this image? Because if not, you may want to get it before you send it along. Just a little reminder of, like, ding, do they want to see what you're about to share with them? Right? And people can either say, yes, I have consent. They can say, no, oops, I'll send that later, and take me to some information about consent online. Super duper simple, right? Hello, Sir Thomas. Lovely to see you. Cosmopolite, why or why not is sometimes asked because a person is curious. However, I learned in class that why can trigger some people because it can also be used in a judgmental way, as though someone is questioning your judgment. Absolutely. And I always like to say that why is often not really that important. Like, because we don't really often know. I mean, how many times have you heard or read about psychological studies where people said, oh, I picked the red one because it was, more vibrant and blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, about an hour before, they had been subliminally shown red images. And so that one seemed more familiar than, the green one or whatever it is. Human brains don't often know why. So asking why can feel very aggressive and attacking and judgmental, as you said, especially when people haven't parsed it out fully in their own brain. It's putting them on the spot to have to explain something when they've already taken that chance to set a boundary, right? Cobalt says, right, they don't imagine a big, burly, hairy guy sending unsolicited parts to them. Absolutely, Cobalt. Womanopolis. In Latin America, saying no is an aggression. I mean, absolutely. So there are definitely specific social things that need to be taken into account. That said, I've known plenty of people from and in Latin America who have overcome saying no, right? They might not even say no because that is too stark for them, but simply saying something like, I so regret, I cannot do that right now, right? Or, hey, sorry, that night's not going to work for me. Or, oh, bummer, I would love to, but I'm not available right then. Or, I don't have the energy for that. I don't have the time for that. There's so many different ways to say no without actually using the word no. Hello, Sabyasachi. Lovely to see you, as always. Cobalt says, I don't think I ever before appreciated how vulnerable setting boundaries can feel until I started. Now I feel bad about times I was obnoxious in the past and feel really inspired to do better. And the wonderful thing is when you're inspired to do better by other people, two things will happen. One, you will be less inclined to take shit from people who try to give it to you. And two, the right people will be inspired to do even better by you. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Cosmopolite. I'm a very analytical person, so I've learned that I ask why or why not a lot, and it definitely doesn't always go over well. So now I'm trying to be more mindful about when I ask that. So here's something important. You don't have to ask why necessarily. So, hey, I just really wasn't a fan of that concert. Oh, really? Why? Right? Or what about, well, what did you like about it? And what were your top 3 dislikes? Right? It gives them something a little bit more specific than why. It does also take a little bit more brain power to think that way, at least at the beginning. Once you get used to thinking that way and thinking of why as almost anathema to conversation, then it becomes a lot easier to think, well, there's all these other questions. I mean, we've got who, right? We've got what, we've got when, we've got where, and we've got how. Why doesn't have to be a part of every conversation, right? Womanopolis says, did you enjoy the dinner? No. Have you said that? Absolutely. I mean, so here's the thing. I personally, in my life, value honesty. Always. 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 And so I had a group of friends over the other night, and I planned this whole menu. And the main course was this Colombian soup. And it was funny because as people sat down at the table, one of the attendees said to their partner, oh, I guess we forgot to tell Nookie that you don't believe in soup as a meal. Wah, wah, wah. Now, they were gracious enough to eat my soup and to say they enjoyed it, right? But there's entirely the possibility that they just don't really like soup. And it didn't occur to them when I asked about, do you have any allergies or avoids, to tell me. Now I have noted in my contact for them, not a huge fan of soups, right? And that can go right along with any allergies that they might have. It can go right along with anything that they tend to avoid. I had some friends coming over. I knew they try to avoid the nightshades. And so I said, I was thinking about making Italian. Do you do tomato sauce? And they said, well, they tend to avoid tomatoes, but they primarily avoid peppers and eggplants and so on and so forth. Great. That's another note that I can make. Honesty, right? It doesn't have to be harsh. It just has to be true. And I have to understand that if somebody doesn't like soup, or if they come over to my house and they are allergic to onions, or they hate, or like me, I dislike radishes. And if somebody doesn't ask me and makes an entire dish out of radishes, then I'm going to have to say, you know what? I bet I would have loved it, except for those pesky radishes. I can't stand radishes. I should have said something. My bad. I'm sorry. But the company was delightful, right? It does not have to be a rejection. It does not have to be just no. Look at all of us learning and growing. Many thanks to Nookie for that. Aw, thank you. And thank you too, Cobalt. I appreciate that. Roger, how are you today? I don't have a problem with being told no, but some people use their boundaries as an excuse to be rude. It's true. Some people do like to beat other people over the head with their boundaries. And we actually talk about that. I wrote a chapter in the book specifically about how we sometimes use boundaries to like hit people over the head and how that's not nice and how we can reduce that in our language and our behaviors. So yeah, you're absolutely 100% right on that one. Cosmopolite, you know what would be worse? If they never said they dislike soup, they spent the next 3 months eating soup at your place and then become resentful because they never told you they dislike soup. Ding! In fact, that is very similar to the logic I use when I talk about lying and the do these jeans make my ass look big problem that is always brought up when I say, you shouldn't lie. And somebody, usually a dude, is like, yeah, but what do I say if she asks me if those jeans make her ass look big? It's either lie or be an asshole. I don't know why I'm doing like silly voices today, but whatever. And I'm like, okay, so you truly believe that in these hypothetical situations that you dream up, that you have to either lie or be an asshole. So lying or brutal honesty, right? What about the idea of compassionate honesty, right? So let's say that my partner asks me, do these jeans make my ass look big? Well, I could say, well, your ass is huge, so what do you expect from a pair of jeans? They're not a miracle worker. Or I could say, you know that no matter what you're wearing, I love your ass. And those jeans are not flattering at all. I don't recommend them. Nope, not a good fit. Don't do it. Right? Simple. Or, they make your butt look a lot bigger and the wrong shape. I love these other ones that you have that make you look fantastic. Can you get more of those? Right? There are plenty of ways to be both honest and compassionate. Cobalt says, I love how your curves are heightened and accentuated by those jeans. Or something as simple as those jeans do nothing for you. Or maybe even those jeans do nothing for me looking at you. And I'm the one going to be following you up and down the stairs. Right? Simple, clear, effective, compassionate. You don't have to be an asshole. So, speaking of not being an asshole, let's talk about rejection versus redirection. Matt Haig said there is no rejection, only redirection. So, boundaries are not rejection. Rejection is rejection. So, what is rejection? The dismissing or refusing of a proposal, idea, etc., or the spurning of a person's affections. In some cases, a personal boundary will lead to you refusing an idea. No, I'm not going to the concert on Friday. I'm up early training for my race. both days this weekend. But hearing that, people often feel like it's the spurning of affections or the rejection of them as a human. And it's not. In fact, I would generally say that communicating about a boundary, communicating something important is the exact opposite of rejection. It's redirection. It's wanting to keep that person in your life with a slight change, right? Otherwise, you could simply say, goodbye, and thanks for all the fish. And if you can tell me where that comes from, you get props. Instead of doing that, though, instead of ghosting, instead of leaving them on red and not speaking to them, you communicate your boundary. You take responsibility for your choices and actions and allow for continued correction and discussion if the other person is willing to take that step, right? Sometimes you'll find that people who take your setting a boundary as rejection will then turn around and reject you as hard as they can and as fast as they can because they're feeling hurt and they want to sour grapes you out the fucking window, right? Well, I didn't want it anyway. Frankly, though, that tells you then what you need to know about them clearly and decisively, right? That tells you that at the very least, they are the type of person that when hurt will take drastic action and lash out to hurt others, right? Cobalt got it right. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah. Goodbye, and thanks for all the fish. Depression is like shit colored glasses, so everything looks and feels like rejection. Absolutely. Rejection sensitivity is a thing and it's growing these days. And I'm not quite sure why. Everybody has theories about why people seem more rejection sensitive than they used to be. My theory is that because we're not taught how healthy boundaries work, we are oversensitive to people having them sometimes. Yeah. Cobalt says, oof, I've done that. It's more like, ouch, if you find out how much this hurt, you can hurt me more or laugh at my hurt. That's also a big thing, right? So I can turn this around and I can reject you and push you away so you can't see my pain. Except, does that really work? I mean, have you ever seen somebody do that and then you're like, oh, heck yeah, they were just a mean person to begin with versus, ooh, really hit a nerve there. I can tell that stung, right? It's an obvious tell once you know what to look for. You can tell when people are feeling triggered and harmed by when they reach out to harm others, right? Which compassionately, I can say, ooh, that must have sucked, right? But with most people, there's not enough history or value to make me want to get past some of that nastiness, to do other, I don't know. Side note, I've come across some articles that rejection sensitive dysphoria is actually just complex PTSD. No one really knows, though. Thanks, Cosmopolite. I mean, absolutely. There are a lot of things that they've been talking about, it might be. The challenge is, though, is that it seems in society today that rejection sensitive dysphoria is on the rise. And does that mean that it's on the rise because it's being, recognized and diagnosed more, or is it on the rise because of something that has to do with society? I don't know. Hard to say, really. Oh, well, my family were the sort to make fun of me being hurt. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really shitty when we grow up being taught these completely problematic, dysfunctional behaviors as what is good and normal and what will help us survive, right? Cobalt says that and pathological demands resistance. Ouch. Womanopolis. Families are the main bullies. So I'm going to say that families are definitely the place where we get a lot of our dysfunction. 100%. I would not say that families are the main bullies or that most families do what I would consider bullying. But yeah, families tend to do the most socialization, especially in the early years. But the thing is that I don't think they're doing it because they're bullying. I think they're doing what they do because that's how they were socialized, and they think that this is how society works, and they want to, teach their children how to get by in society as best as possible. So what I'm trying to get across, and in about 20 minutes, I'm actually also going to be going live for the Take No Shit workshop today on our private platform, talking about like how to unravel this fault issue that we have, and that it's not your fault up until now. And honestly, going back to Cosmopolite's conversation, the why you are like this matters much less than what are we going to do about it? How are we going to change our behavior and our reactions moving forward? So some fascinating studies have been done. And one of the studies was the idea that when we get into a pattern of feeling a particular way, let's say sadness, we then can influence our own feelings by our behaviors. So the theory out there right now is that you have emotions, which are physiological responses in your body. And then your feelings are how you interpret those emotions in your mind. So I'm feeling a little down and tired today. And I've got no reason to be physically down and tired. So I start thinking, well, gosh, maybe I'm a little sad about something. I don't know. Depression? I don't know. And so we start maybe behaving physiologically like we're depressed, right? So we do things that we do when we're depressed, which convinces our brain that we are absolutely, positively sad and depressed, right? So studies have been done. Do we feel the way we do because we feel this way and then we act it out? Or do we feel the way we do because we act it out and we interpret it this way? And like nature versus nurture, there's elements of both, but it is astonishing how much our behaviors, our physiology affects how we feel. So a study was done, and this is just like, it was a tiny little study, but it's an interesting one. The idea was, do you feel depression because you are depressed, or do you feel depression because you do depressive things, like you make sad faces and so on and so forth? So they took these 9 women, only 9. Okay, so I understand how science works, but this is a really fascinating little thing, and I want to follow up on it. I just haven't yet. 9 women who were depressed, and they gave those 9 women Botox, just in the parts of their faces, the muscles of their faces that are associated with frowning. So they could still smile and they could still be expressive, but they couldn't frown. They couldn't get that right there. And I think it was 90 days later. They didn't give them any developmental resources. They didn't give them any, assistance. They didn't talk to them about their depression, and against a control group. And those 9 women at the end of 90 days had drastically reduced, almost none, depression left. Very, very small sample. But it's indicative of many studies that are being done. There's a study out there that talks about, if you hold, I'm going to use my pencil here. Really hold it really hard. You have to, like that. See how I was like holding it really hard? It's like a frown, right? And then if you hold it in your teeth without your lips touching it, it's like a smile, right? So they had people do things holding a stick or a pencil or a pen or something just like that in one of those 2 ways, and then answer questions. And the people that held it in their teeth without their lips touching, in the smile, right, just like this, were markedly happier when answering their questions versus the people who held it in a frowny face, right? So I think it's important to understand that whatever we are right now, whatever you are, Roger, whoever you are, Cosmopolite, like whatever brought you to this place, Barb's, Sabyasachi, all of you, whatever has happened in your life, you can choose to move forward in a different way. Okay? Or the same way if you feel like you're making positive strides. Cosmopolite. Interoception. So interoception is how we interpret signals from our body as emotions, feelings, thoughts, etc., etc., etc. Right? So it's absolutely very relevant to this, because if you're walking along and you've got your head up high and your shoulders back and you've got a big smile and you're feeling the wind in your hair and you're just kind of like that, then how are you able to feel bad? Right? But if you're walking along and you're slouched over and at this grunt and you're looking at you're sort of like slunching along, right? I mean, aside from realizing that you're being really silly, how are you going to feel good like that? Interoception suggests that in many of the ways our body behaves, something like indigestion can make us feel depression. They talk about gut health and the biome, how that affects our brain. Now, I don't get super deep into all of this, but I do pay attention when I'm feeling something and what I might be feeling physiologically versus how I'm interpreting it psychologically, and looking for other options, especially when it's not so good. Roger says, I agree, but it's very difficult at times. I need to get over it. Somehow it seems to keep being thrown. Oh, it is incredibly difficult. No, please, Roger, don't think that I am telling you that any of this is easy. It's not. I've taken years of really focusing on making my life exactly what I want it to be to get to where I am. Like years and years and years. So, and I still fudge it all up regularly. It is not easy. It isn't. It's like muscle memory. We keep practicing it and practicing it and practicing it and practicing it and practicing it. And eventually we get it right more often than we foobar it, right? And then we can look back and say, well, that wasn't so bad, because our brains are freaking fantastic and they edit out a lot of the really messed up stuff and allow us to keep the good bits, right? Or we can give in and say, I can't do it. It's impossible. I'll always be a failure. Or whatever I am right now, right? Cobalt says, I can't tell hunger and anxiety apart, so I snack a lot. There you go. And that's one of the things they talk about when it comes to, and I don't want to get in on anything that really focuses in on like dieting or body dysmorphia or anything like that. But when engaging in some sort of health regimen, they often talk about like, are you feeling anxious or are you feeling hungry? Because if you're feeling hungry, maybe pause and drink a cup of water and then wait for 20 minutes and see if you're still hungry, right? Or eat a small handful of nuts and then wait for 2 hours or whatever, right? There's a lot of different options. And one of the things I'm doing with my local Discord server right now is I'm doing the daily happy. And in fact, interestingly enough, I can share this with you. Let's see. So the Daily Happy this week has a 4-part series, and this is part 3 of this 4-part series. So you can see, like, this is my little work for today. And it's a problematic behavior to change, and it's a goal within one of, I use 5 different areas: love and relationships, personal projects, physical health, work, and overall. And so I'm happy right now with my love and relationships, and I'm happy right now with my overall. And I have 3 problematic issues, behaviors to change in my personal project, my physical health, and my work. And I have written down the problematic behavior and written down what I'm going to change about my behavior in order to move me towards my goals. Right? And I do things like this every day, not necessarily that happens every so often, right? But changing your behavior can change your feelings. Changing your behavior can change your beliefs. Changing your posture can change how you feel and what you interpret those feelings to mean. Now, I'm not going to say, look in a mirror and smile when you're feeling sad and it will make you happy. But I am going to say what I said to somebody a couple of weeks ago when this friend of mine was feeling a bit down and was like, oh, I think I might just go back to bed. And I sent them a little message. I'm like, hey, going back to bed is likely to actually make you feel worse. So studies have shown that if you're feeling a bit down, if you get out and you do the things that you would normally do when you're feeling happy, you won't get worse. And you may actually get better. Now, there's no guarantees. Every human is different. These are the types of things, though, that I like to try out for myself. And I'm offering them to you so you can try them out. I'm not saying give up your drugs. I'm not saying give up your therapy. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying there are little things that you might be able to do to help you, to assist in whatever, medications you might be on, or to assist in your therapy. And part of that is as simple as setting a boundary is not a rejection. Somebody saying no thank you is not necessarily a rejection of you. It's a rejection of your offer, redirection of you, right? Cobalt says, self-soothing is like a muscle, which means boundaries are like bulging muscles. It's how we show others what we're working with. Yeah, you see these guns? Those are some boundaries right there. Right there. When I force a smile, it makes me feel worse because I know it's contrived. Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying, don't force it. Looking in a mirror and smiling, though, like this, can sometimes make me laugh. But that doesn't even work. Because I know if I'm trying to make me laugh, then it's silly. However, what you can do, though, is when you're feeling sad, get out and do the things that you do when you're happy. What do you do when you're happy? Do you get out and walk? Do you go play tennis? Do you read a book? Do you hang out with friends? Do the things that you normally do when you're happy. And for many people, it doesn't matter if it's contrived, because it's not leaving the physiology and the time and mental space for you to feel sadder. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me today. I appreciate it. Again, I'm Nookie, or Heather Claus, and I am currently writing my boundaries book. Right there. Ooh, there we go. I'll get the hang of this one of these days. Boundaries are sexy as fuck. That's the working title. I'm writing it live. I have 40 chapters up, and you can get each chapter as it's written if you join me with this link right there in the chat also, by registering for my Take No Shit workshop, which officially opened on Monday. And today, in about 5 minutes, will be our first private live connection to go with the lessons that were released just today. And this is a beta run for this class. I'm super excited to be going through all of this, and I will be taking feedback and improving it. And then the next time around, the price will not be $27 or as low as $7. It will be higher and going all the way up eventually to a retail price of $197 for this Take No Shit workshop. So right now it is an amazing deal. You get the workshop 7 weeks, you get access to me with your questions, and you get the full book. So I hope you can join me. And I'm going to have to bid you adieu so I am not late for my next live. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me today. Thank you for bringing your questions and your comments and your insights. And next week, I'm going to be talking about on Tuesday, have you ever wanted to kick a puppy? And then Thursday, I don't have it in there. So I'm going to have to figure out what's going on next Thursday. I don't have it in my calendar. That means I need to come up with more. So maybe I'll take some suggestions on that. So next Tuesday, have you ever wanted to kick a puppy? See you all soon. Thank you so much for joining me.